Muscle mass is probably the second most highly correlated finding, or third most, to longevity after strength and cardiorespiratory fitness, VO2 max. So why is that? So first of all, I think that muscle mass is both directly a proxy for strength. In general, the more muscle you have, the stronger you are. We all know exceptions to that. We know wiry little people who are insanely strong, and I have patients like that. They're just naturally, thin people, but when we put them through the testing protocols, they're remarkable in terms of their strength. And I tend to not worry about the fact that they're slight in build when I see that they're strong across the board. There is another benefit of muscle mass, which is it's the place where you dispose of glucose. So from a metabolic perspective, the more muscle mass you have, the more glucose buffering capacity you have. One of the hallmarks of aging is a reduction in the capacity to metabolize and buffer glucose. And so as glucose levels become less and less regulated, all sorts of bad things happen. Bad things happen to microvessels in the body. So if you think of the most extreme example of this is type 2 diabetes. So once a person has type 2 diabetes, what are they at risk for? They're at the risk of reduced vision and ultimately blindness, amputations of their digits, impotence, right? The penis has tons of tiny blood vessels in it, and the more that, glycosylated proteins accumulate there, the less they get blood flow, and obviously damage to the small blood vessels of the brain as well. So all of these things are hugely problematic when glucose is dysregulated. And again, the most important thing that you can do to regulate glucose, in addition to the obvious, which is eating in energy balance, not eating too much, is making sure you have large insulin-sensitive muscles, which means large muscles in the context of an individual who's sleeping well and exercising, and you're gonna basically have a great place to put all of that glucose when you can. So one of the surest ways to reduce your capacity to store fat is to add more muscle. Grip strength, of all the strength metrics, it's one of the most highly correlated with longevity. We actually prefer to do it like a 10 squared, where your colleagues tested yesterday. We prefer to do it on a dead hang. So we make them hang from a bar, and we just time how long they can hang. So that's a really good metric of your grip strength, because it can hang for at least 2 minutes on a bar. And so the question is, why is that so highly correlated with longevity? And it's what you said, it's strength. And the reason for it is it's really hard to be strong anywhere in the upper body if your grip is weak. Like if you think about being able to push, especially being able to pull, like all of the real metrics of upper body strength require a strong grip. And if you have a strong grip, you have a strong hand, you have a strong forearm, you have a strong scapula that is connected to your rib cage. Like it goes up the whole chain. And that's another reason why we like the dead hang as a way to test it, because the dead hang is testing everything. It's testing your actual grip. It's testing your scapular stabilization, the stability of your shoulder. It's basically testing that entire chain. And then I also think there's a practical side of this, right? When it's very underappreciated what frailty does to an aging individual, and what sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass, does to an aging person, and what it is about falling that is so devastating to an older person. And the stronger your grip, the easier you're able to navigate a lot of those things. So once you reach the age of 65, which that ain't that far. I mean, if you know 65-year-olds all day long. That's not a very old person. Yeah. Once you reach the age of 65, your mortality from a fall that results in a broken hip or femur is 15 to 30%. Just think, it is such a staggering number. So you're over 65, you fall, and that fall results in the break of a femur or hip. There's a 15 to 30% chance you'll be dead within a year. It could be something very acute, like you bang, the fall that's significant enough to do that also bangs your head. It could be that you get a fat embolism, you get a blood clot. It could be that, during the recovery process of this, you just never really get better, you never thrive again. I think a more disturbing statistic is that of all the people who survive, 50% will never again regain the level of function they had before the injury. A lot of it comes down to foot explosiveness, power. So the reason you're not really afraid of falling, like when was the last time you were walking and your foot caught something and you slipped? Why don't you fall when that happens? The power in your foot to readjust when you lose your step. You step off a curb, not realizing it doesn't matter. These are a very, very specific muscle fiber that is responsible for that. It's called the type 2B muscle fiber. That is the first fiber that atrophies when you age. My power is a fraction of what it was 20 years ago. Now, I fight like hell based on the exercises I do to try to keep it as high as possible. So the reason that these, people who are in their 70s are falling all the time is people think it's a balance thing. It's not just a balance thing, right? It's that they're undergoing the same insult you and I undergo on a daily basis, but the difference is their probability of being able to catch it, either through the explosiveness of their foot or their lower leg, coupled with maybe not being able to grab onto something as quickly and adjust, it's a power deficit problem. I think jumping is a great way to do this, right? So I mean, I use certain specialized pieces of equipment that actually have power built into it, because power is different from strength, right? So strength is really the ability to, is just the ability to move a force, independent of the speed at which you move it. Power is the maximum combination of force and speed.
Okay.
So if you, on the x-axis, if you were to put force, and on the y-axis, if you were to put power, the curve is an inverted U. So as the force or the weight that you're moving goes up, and you're trying to move it as fast as you can, you're getting more and more and more and more power. But then at some point, the weight gets so heavy that even as you continue to move it, it's going slower and slower and slower, so your power is going down. So there's a sweet spot there. So one of the things I do is there's certain specialized pieces of equipment that allow you to train in that way. So I definitely rely on a lot of those. But even if you don't have access to that machine, jumping is a really important way to generate power. So if you're just doing a vertical jump, that's power.